just randomly decided to start recording a video. You can complain about the camera angle, or the background noises, or whatever, the lighting, whatever. Go ahead and complain, I don't give a shit. Does it really matter? I'm not in that mood where I'm just like, nothing matters. I'm not really in that mood. Of course, it's hard to tell you what mood I'm in. The thing about people is they seem to think that there are only the moods that you can put into words, and thus only the moods that you can expect. Because if you try to understand what mood someone's in, you will think happy, sad, angry, depressed, confused, lonely, content. These words are not moods, they are words. And if you are telling yourself that you are one of these words, then you're taking something that's really complicated and you're simplifying it down. You're taking a very highly detailed image and lowering the resolution until it is just one pixel with one color that's based on an 8-bit, color spectrum. Emotion does not work on a digital spectrum. In fact, I do not really think that emotion works on a spectrum at all. I think that emotion seems to be more in a space than on a spectrum. That would mean, well, a spectrum is one-dimensional. This is the notion of good and bad. Do you feel good or do you feel bad? It's an oversimplification of the true nature of emotions. Now, does it work on a two-dimensional spectrum? Or I should say, on a plane, the X and Y coordinates. Does it work like that? I don't really think so. If I thought hard enough, I could figure it out that maybe there are two very important variables to deal with when it comes to emotion. perhaps happiness and calm, perhaps those two. But does it really capture the nature of being lonely? Lonely is an emotion. Lonely among many other things, of course. But isn't that interesting? We have a word, lonely, for this emotion. And of course, the word implies something. It means that you are alone and you are hurt by the fact that you're alone. What does that have to do with emotions? The fact that someone is alone, but it does. And we just automatically understand what lonely means. It's actually a lot more informative, the word lonely, than a word like happy or sad. Those words are very simplified, and they seem to imply that emotion is simply, or that, I shouldn't say simply, that emotion is the source of itself. Emotion comes from emotion. That's what a lot of psychiatry in the modern world seems to think. You have a brain imbalance. Of course, I'm not denying that brain imbalances go along with chronic bad emotions. But it seems like psychiatry assumes, or I should say modern psychology, neuropsychology, whatever that's called, assumes that the source of the problem is the chemical imbalance in the brain. The truth is, we don't know if the chemical imbalance is the problem or if it is caused by the problem, or if it is simply one of the steps in a complicated chain. That perhaps doesn't even have a beginning. We're just kind of part of this world. The way that we feel at any given moment is just kind of where we are as a result of where the system has put us through events in our lives. Getting back to the word lonely conveys not only the emotion, but also the source of that emotion. You feel bad, not simply because you feel bad, but you feel bad because you're alone. And these kind of ideas don't really work in psychology or psychiatry today. They work in therapy, but therapy and psychology, it seems, are less and less connected, especially when you're dealing with neuropsychology, people who study the brain in an attempt to study the mind. I do not discredit the field of neuroscience. It's a wonderful field just like any other, and it is science. But the conclusions made based on it are also based on assumptions. And oftentimes I fear that these assumptions are made with haste for the monetary benefit of pharmaceutical companies. You'll find it very fascinating to see how new the psychiatric drugs that are in use today are. They only just started using what they're using today. Yesterday's drugs are seen as failures. Today's drugs are seen as saviors. But of course the truth is it's all marketing. And now, while they may be developing drugs that have less side effects and are perhaps more effective, it is nonetheless highly indicative of a field that is in a primitive state of development rather than one that really knows what it's doing. Psychiatry today is in an infant stage. Now, of course, it is far more advanced than the psychiatry of yesterday, far more compassionate as well, which is a very good thing. It is evolving in good directions. But there's a major problem with it in that it is seen as a science, a Western science, and Western science unfortunately has gone in line all along with empirical objectivism and materialism, monism, naturalism. It has many names. I may be wrong about this one, but Cartesianism? I might be wrong about that one. But it is the notion that science can understand every area, that empirical science studied through the exact same process that physics is studied through, which is generally the original science. But the mind is not like physics. If it is, it runs based on laws that are much more rich and complicated than the laws that you get in the physical world. This is all tied together. I am not wandering at all. It's tied together to the idea that the word loneliness is so much more descriptive than the word sad. We seem to think, well, psychology today seems to not understand the causality of human interaction, which is truly the source of all emotion. The excess of empirical objectivism today often result in scientists who believe that emotion doesn't even exist. And the truth of the matter is that the main problem with psychologists all throughout history, especially further in the past, is that they have far too little feminine awareness, far too much masculine awareness. They think that things can be solved by grabbing a tool, reaching in and tightening some kind of bolt, or replacing some part, or injecting some chemical that will change some element of the physiology. This is simply not how the human mind works. Like the word loneliness, our emotions come from the situations we are experiencing. They come from not only the situations we are experiencing, but also the situations that we have experienced. Emotion is a game of causal pinball between human beings. And the West seems to think that emotion is some kind of well-oiled machine with many moving parts that all should be working in harmony based on some kind of balance of chemistry or something. A lifestyle even. Oh, you're lonely? Then you need to go exercise more. Exercising more will make you less lonely. What? That is absolute bullshit. No, the reason you're lonely is because you have lost people that were your friends. Or you never found them in the first place. And there's a reason for that. And it has to do with your choices. It has to do with what kind of person you are. It has to do with things that you can change about yourself. But you are locked in this way that you are currently. Why are you lonely? It's because you have no one. If you are of the feeling that no one loves you, I'm not going to I'm not going to rebut that by saying you're wrong. Everyone loves you. Because why would you be saying it in the first place? You say no one loves you because there's a reason, there's a feeling,